interrupt our regular programming to bring you this special report. Last Thursday, June 27th, my model railroad friend, John Grady, came to visit me right here in Panama City, Panama, and I want to tell you about John's visit in this special edition of Dispatch. I'm Roy Smith, your dispatcher. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is John. John is the first ever model railroader to visit me here in Panama. We had tons of fun during his visit last Thursday, and I want to tell you about it in tonight's special edition of Dispatch. No sooner did John arrive than he presented me with this awesome gift, an Atlas N-Scale SD60 and an Atlas Missouri Pacific boxcar. John had already installed a decoder in the SD60 and had already programmed the road number. What a guy! All I had to do was put it on the track and run it. At first glance, you may think it's a Kansas City Southern unit because it certainly has the KCS paint scheme. But if you look closely, you will see that its road name says Panama Canal Railway. How could that be? Well, here's how. Panama began to rebuild the obsolete Panama Canal Railway starting in 1998, and since 2008, the modern railway has been providing both intermodal and passenger service from Panama City on the Pacific coast to Colón on the Atlantic coast. The railway parallels the Panama Canal and stretches 48 miles across the isthmus, as the red line depicts. It has the Kansas City Southern color scheme because the Panama Canal Railway is partly owned by the KCS. Altogether, the Panama Canal Railway Company owns 18 diesel locomotives, 5 of which are SD60s. The Atlas model of one of the SD60s, number 1870, now sits on my layout as you see it here, thanks to John. Well, you're not going to believe my good fortune. Yesterday, as John was flying back to Austin, I decided to go down to the intermodal yard about 1.5 miles from my house to take some photos of the trains. And here's what I saw when I got there. The real 1870, sitting right there as if waiting for me to come along and take some photos of it. Right in front of all of the other locomotives, and as easy to photograph as if it was the very same Atlas SD60 that John gave to me. I couldn't believe it, and I can't begin to tell you how happy I felt when I saw it. Here's the prototype and the model. I guess that seeing is believing after all. Now I was all pumped up, so I took more photos and videos. Here you see some of the 40-foot container cars in the intermodal yard. Freight service in Panama is strictly intermodal. This is where trains with 100-plus cars depart the intermodal yard en route to Colón on the other side of the isthmus. Note the large building indicated by the red arrow on the lower slopes of Ancon Hill. This is the Panama Canal Administration Building, and this is a closer view of the Canal Administration Building. I'm showing you this photo because I drove up to the building to take the next 2 photos that I'm going to show to you. This photo gives you an overview of the intermodal yard. You can't see 1870 in the photo, but it's sitting where the red arrow indicates. And the red arrow in this photo shows you roughly where my house is, not far from the intermodal yard. I can easily hear the train horns when I sit outside on my back porch. Later in the afternoon, as I was returning home from running some errands, I noticed that containers were being loaded onto the train. I also noticed 2 locomotives moving to a different track in the yard. But let's get back to John's visit. John's second hobby after model railroading is photography. Here you see him photographing and filming my layout. John and I are real model railroaders. So the first thing we did was run some trains, starting with my big blow turbine pulling an eastbound covered hopper train. Then we ran 844 pulling an excursion train, also eastbound. Well, after a while, we dragged ourselves away from the layout to do some tourist stuff. First, we went to the Amador Causeway. The causeway juts out from the mainland to connect 4 small islands at the Pacific entrance to the Panama Canal. It's a favorite destination for tourists and locals alike. It was originally built from rocks extracted during the construction of the Panama Canal, and was meant to serve as a breakwater for the entrance to the canal. A 4-lane road runs along the causeway, connecting the 4 islands. There are a lot of marinas, shops, and restaurants located on the islands. My wife Leonor, who is Panamanian, went with us. You can see all of Panama City from east to west from the causeway. We ate lunch at Mi Ranchito restaurant on the causeway. John is waiting for his shrimp with garlic sauce. After lunch, we drove over to the Miraflores Locks Visitor Center of the Panama Canal. Here, the upper level of the visitor center provides the best view of ships passing through the locks. This is the view of the canal facing north toward the Atlantic, and the view facing south toward the Pacific. Okay, I'm here with my good friend John Grady, who's visiting me today. I just want to introduce him, and the only thing that I really want to say before letting John talk is you will notice that John is considerably taller than I am. I'm 6'3", and John, you're what? 6'6"? Yes. Okay. So John is one of the few guys that I've ever met that I need to look up to. And I think we can all look up to John, whether we're as tall as he is or not, because he's one heck of a guy, and I can tell you that I'm awfully glad that he has come here to spend some time today with me. I'm going to ask John to tell us where he's from, perhaps a word about what brings him today, this week, to Panama City here in Panama, and then perhaps share his thoughts with us on some of the things we did today.
Happy to.
John, I hope that although you are the first official model railroad visitor to be here in Panama, I hope you are just the first among many yet to come. You are all invited to come down and spend some time with me as John is doing today.
So my name is John Grady. I'm from Austin, Texas. Model railroader, N scale, very beginning. I've been following Roy for about 1.5 years, subscribed back then, I've seen most of his videos. I was down here in Panama for a conference, and just on a whim, I wrote Roy and said, hey, I'm going to be in town, would love to come by and see your track. And he most graciously accepted, so we spent the day, and pretty much the whole day. We ran some trains, which was a blast, And then Roy and his wife Leonora were gracious enough to take me around Panama. It's a beautiful area, beautiful country. We had a lovely lunch, saw the Panama Canal. It's been an awesome visit. Thanks, Roy and Leonora.
John, thank you so much for coming to spend some time with me. It was tons of fun. And thanks for the SD60 and the boxcar. I really appreciate it. You will be seeing a lot more of it running on my layout. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me here on Dispatch tonight, and thanks for letting me share John Grady's visit with you. Of course, if you're new here, I want to encourage you to subscribe and hit that notification bell because I've got a whole bunch of stuff to share with you and I don't want you to miss any of it. Next Tuesday night, we will resume our regular format here on Dispatch. Be sure to join me then. And until then, happy railroading. I'm Roy Smith, and I will see you again very soon.